Certainly, we could not leave our discussion about inverse functions without a word problem. And this is a word problem that's got several parts to it. So we're going to have to be persistent, stick with it, because you'll want to get tired of it, I'm sure. And I'm going to have to be patient because I've got to think about it a little bit. Keep my wits about me. So let's see what we got. Solada's net pay is 65% of her gross pay. So of her gross pay, she only gets 65%. That means 35% is going somewhere else. You know where the majority of that's going? Taxes. Let that soak in for a little bit. And she budgets $600 a month for living expenses. She estimates she can save 20% of her remaining money. So her 1 month savings, which is represented as f of x, the function, for a gross pay of x dollars, so x equals her gross pay in this function, is given by f of x equals 0.20, that's 20% for her go to savings, times 0.65x minus 600, which is her living expenses. And so our first couple of questions are, explain why the inverse function exists, and then find the inverse function. Well, when I look at this function, I might be able to spot that it's a linear function, and it's got a slope, doesn't have a zero slope, and it's not undefined, so it's got a slope, a linear function, and so it'll pass the horizontal line test no matter what it looks like. It's going to pass the horizontal line test. So yeah, it does exist. Now it says find the inverse. Now I don't have a whole lot of room here, so I'm going to go ahead and do the first step, swap the x's and y's, and so we're going to say that x is equal to, and I'm also going to go ahead and distribute this 0.2 or 2/2100ths or 2/10 to the 0.65x minus 600. And when I do that, then I'm going to end up with 0.13 y minus 120. Well, I got to solve for y, so I'm going to add 120 to both sides. So we got x plus 120 equals 0.13 y. And now we're going to divide by this 0.13. Well, what is 0.13? It's actually 13 over 100, right? And if I'm dividing by 0.3, that's going to be the same as multiplying both of these terms by 100 over 13. So here at the x, this would be 100x over 13 plus 120. Well, 120 times 100 is going to be 12,000. We'll add 2 zeros to it, over 13 equals y. And then we want to write it in inverse function notation. So we got f. The inverse function is equal to 100x over 13 plus 12,000 over 13. Okay, well, we've gotten through that part. Let's go to part B. Now, part B states that what does the inverse function and x represent in the inverse function? Let's go back to the function itself. The function itself, f of x equaled the gross pay, and the f of x equaled the monthly savings, and x represented the gross pay. So if that's the inverse, then those things ought to flip, shouldn't they? And so if that's the case, then the inverse function, f of x, rather than being the savings, represents the gross pay for a month, and x, rather than representing the gross pay, is going to represent her savings for the month. All right, we got through section 2, or B. Let's look at C. Now I graphed the function and its inverse, and the function is represented by the blue line on the graph, and the inverse is by the red. And we're being asked here, should there be any restrictions on the domain? And I see where on this blue line we cross this x-axis. And I think I had to set this scale to even be able to look at anything for a scale of 100. So each little tick mark was worth $100. Yeah, well, I guess it would be in dollars, $100. And the same is true on the y-axis, where we do see a y-intercept. So let's see, on this x-axis, on this blue line, the function itself, that represented, f of x represents the amount of money she saved. So she's got to make a certain amount of money to save anything at all, because anything less than that would be negative savings. She doesn't have enough. So she's got to make a certain amount of money to have any savings. And the y-intercept of the red line actually tells us that since x is equal to her savings, well, there at the origin going up here where the y-intercept is, she's not saving any money, so she's got to make a certain amount over that. So I think if we can find the x and y-intercept, x-intercept of the function and the y-intercept of the inverse, they should be the same, and that will help us understand what kind of restriction to the domain we've got. So let's start here with the function itself. So we got f of x equals 0.20 times 0.65x minus 600. And if I want to find the x-intercept, I set y equal to 0. Well, let's divide by that 0.20. So 0 divided by 0.20 is just going to remain 0, right? So that's going to be gone. And then let's just stick here with 0.65x minus 600. Let's add 600 to both sides. Equals 0.65x. And let's see, 600 divided by 0.65. Let's get my calculator out here. And if I round that to the nearest penny, that would be $923.08. All right, well, what if I find the y-intercept of the inverse function? Hopefully that would also be 923.08. So let's see, the inverse function, as I recall, was 100x over 13 plus 12,000 over 13. All right, and so if I set x equal to 0, because I want to find the y-intercept, well, 100 times 0 in the numerator of that first expression, that's going to be 0. And so I'm going to be left with 12,000 over 13. And what's 12,000 over 13? Well, Shazam, it's also $923.08. So I think we can conclude here that our domain has to be, because we're not going to have negative income, negative savings, any of those things, that it's got to be where x is greater than or equal to $923.08. Cool. All right, one last piece in this. My persistence is wearing thin. I don't know about yours. All right, determine Solada's gross pay for 1 month if her savings for that month was $120. Now, if we go back to the original function, f of x equaled her monthly savings, and x equaled her gross pay. So we're going to use the original function to solve this. But let's say then if that's the case, then we're going to say 120, that would be your monthly savings, is equal to 0.20 times 0.65 x minus 600. I think I'm going to go ahead and distribute the 0.20. I think. Yeah. All right. And so we'd have 120 equals 0.13x minus 120. Let's add 120 to both sides. We got 240 equals 0.13x. And so her monthly income, in order to save $120, we can find by taking 240 and dividing it by 0.13, and that equals $1,846.15. So in order for Solada to save $120 a month, she's with her $600 living expenses and budgeting 20% for savings, she would need to make her gross income would need to be $1,846.15. Now I know that was absolutely thrilling. I'm thrilled just to get through it.